Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Stats Are Facts podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kress, and today we will be going over the Buffalo Bills defensive season from 2013. But first, let me just talk a little bit about what's going on with this podcast. I'm still trying to work out with live streaming. Once that happens, we'll be able to see the screen. It'll make the show a lot better, but you'll be able to see the stats, and we'll pull out some interesting stuff. But for now, we're stuck with just the normal podcast. So, and also the quality will be better. But for now, let's just dive right into the Bills' defensive year. I mean, great year. No, excuse me, for the Bills. When it comes down to it, I mean, didn't really work out. I mean, still went 6-10. But as we, if you can see here, I mean, the Bills, when it comes to points per game let up, they weren't awful. They were 13th in the NFL, tied with the New York Jets, giving up only 24 points a game. I mean, that's not awful, especially if the Bills' offense would have played better. That's the only problem. Like some of these teams, like if you have a defense only letting in like 20 points a game, and you have an offense who can score, it's all right. That's why the Bills needed to do more this year, because the offense couldn't help them out that much. Yards per game, the Bills were a little less. They gave up a lot of yards, both ways. Mostly from the ground they struggled with, but they were 23rd in the league when it comes to that, averaging 333 yards per game. So, I mean, that's not good. They got to step that up. The first team was the Seattle Seahawks, only giving up 273 yards per game. The second, they were the only team allowing under 300 yards per game. On average, of course. So, I mean, an alright defensive year. But when you think of the Bills' defense this year, you think of the sack leaders. Just the sacks. Their defensive line was so dominant this year. And that was headlined by a huge free agent acquisition a few years back, Mario Williams. They paid him boatloads of money to come in. He had 10.5 sacks last year, so not awful. But this year he did a little bit better. 13 sacks. And Williams is the guy who, out of anyone's going to get double-teamed on the Bills. So, I mean, I was really impressed with Mario Williams this year, and if he does that exact same thing next year, I'll be just as happy. I mean, that's all they need him to do. I mean, he's not going to be like Robert Quinn year and stuff. I mean, that'd be insane if he could get up to like 20 sacks, but really all he needs is to get low teens every year, and that'd be a huge help. But I mean, the rest of the team, also, the rest of the defensive line was good too. Kyle Williams had 10.5 sacks, which is 16th in the league. Williams was 4 in the league for that with sacks, so that's really good. But Jerry Hughes also for the Bills had 10 sacks this year. I mean, he was a huge addition. They traded Kelvin Shepherd for him, so that was a great win on the trade for the Bills. Now the question is, will he be back next year? I'm hoping, but we don't know what's going to happen really with the Bills' defense next year. Jim Schwartz now, the defensive coordinator that Mike Pettine's in Cleveland as their head coach. So, and he said he's going to switch it back to 4-3 or 3-4. I mean, and that's going to be interesting to see how he's going to do that. I mean, we have 4 outstanding linemen. Well, what I'm thinking is when the Bills drafted Marcel Darius, they were a 3-4, and Darius ran he was a defensive end. So I'm expecting for 3-4, I'm expecting Kyle Williams to be the nose tackle. Then Darius will be the end, and the other end's unspoken. Maybe Carrington or Alan Branch or Mario Williams will play there, but he could also play outside linebacker along with Jerry Hughes. With their inside linebackers, no problem for the Bills. Kiko Alonso had a great rookie year. Probably, in my opinion, he should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year, but no, I'm not trying to take anything away from Sheldon Richardson. He also had a great year. So, but when it comes to tackles, Kiko Alonso had a great year, and that was really good to see of him. He was a second-round pick out of Oregon, so I was happy to see it. But what I would think about the reason why Kiko didn't win Defensive Rookie of the Year is because he kind of slowed down after first 8 weeks of the season. He had 4 interceptions in that time, and then he kind of slowed down. So that's interesting. But when it comes to tackles, Kiko Alonso was third in the league out of his tackles. So that's a real help for the Bills middle next year. And then also another question is who will be their second middle linebacker. There's also talk about the Bills getting another linebacker in their first round, maybe C.J. Mosley out of Alabama. They're talking, so if they get Kiko's going to be a middle linebacker, then they still have Arthur Moats, maybe Nigel Bradham to play in there with him. And Manny Lawson's also another outside linebacker who I didn't mention, but he had a great year as well. I was really impressed with him. I mean, so the Bills' defense really, there's not that many problems on it. They got to, first of all, I see no reasons why they shouldn't be re-signing Jairus Byrd. He missed the first 6 weeks of the season or something like that, and he comes out and just has an outstanding Pro Bowl year. Byrd is one of the best safeties in the league, and I think, in my opinion, he's top 5 safeties. Maybe the best is Earl Thomas from Seattle. Cam Chancellor's another good one. Seattle's defense is just insane. But really, there's not a lot of dominant safeties, and I think that Byrd is one of those guys. He doesn't miss tackles. He intercepts. He gets a bunch of interceptions. I don't really see what else. He's a leader too. He held out last year, so now they just got to re-sign him. I don't see any reasons why they wouldn't. They got to get him here for a long-term deal, and I don't see any reason why not. So, yeah, their secondary is alright. Stephon Gilmore, who we're talking about, as their number 1 cornerback. Gilmore he had an alright season, but it wasn't nothing to be amazed with. I mean, he had a hand injury, which kind of limited him, but the player I was really happy with was Leotis McKelvin. McKelvin did a great job of stepping up when the Bills needed a corner. Aaron Williams looked alright at the beginning, but then he got injured, and now he's back at safety position. So, I mean, last year I wasn't really a huge fan of McKelvin, but after seeing him this year, I'm happy with him as our number 2 cornerback. And then our number 3 is a kind of a toss-up. There's still Ron Brooks. Nicole Roby had a great year, in my opinion. So it's going to be interesting to see him, see what he can do. I mean, he had a couple sacks, but not too many. I really liked him, and he was probably the surprise player of the year, in my opinion. So yeah, that's really what their cornerback situation is going to be. So I don't really think they need that much on defense. If I was them, I'd go out in the draft, maybe draft a receiver in the first round, maybe a linebacker, and probably maybe an offensive lineman, something like that, or a tight end. But it seems a little early for a tight end in their first round pick, but we'll get into all of that as the later podcasts come out. Because that's what our next one's going to be about, probably talking about the Combine coming up, because the Combine is soon, so that's going to be interesting to see, and we'll have tons to cover, because Combine is all about stats, and yeah, we'll be seeing the best players, and it's kind of a toss-up on where the Bills should go in the first round. Receiver's an option, that's really, and offensive line are the only 2 on the offensive side, and then probably linebacker. They don't need another D lineman, or I don't want to be boring like this again, but maybe draft another cornerback. I have no problem with them getting another corner in the first round, even though it's boring, because they just got Gilmore 2 years ago, but it's ever best for the team. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Stats Are Facts podcast. Next one will be up next Monday. Talking probably about the Combine, more about the draft, getting into that stuff as it approaches. And as always, check out what's going on at realbillsnow.blogspot.com. And all the latest articles, mock drafts. It's getting into the draft time of year, so we'll be covering that type of stuff. And follow our Twitter account at BillsNowBlog. So for now, we'll see you next time.